Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chatham House. I hope you can all hear me here. I'm Robin Niblett, the director of the Institute. Welcome to this next edition of the Polish-British Belvedere Forum. I've got to leave the Brits in, even if we're a little short on politicians at the moment. We are very much still here. What a day to be holding this meeting. It is always a dramatic moment. The last time we actually held the meeting physically here was in March 2020. I think we were possibly one of the last events, we were, I think, the last event to take place at Chatham House prior to the lockdown. It's wonderful to welcome you all back here to the Institute. And we very much look forward to a productive and intense 24 hours of this next Polish-British Belvedere Forum discussion. We have, as you can see from your agenda, a very packed 24 hours, including with some opening remarks and statements that we'll be hearing very shortly. So I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to say, sadly, this will be my last opportunity to welcome this forum as director of Chatham House. I'm stepping down after 15 years at the end of this month. But it is one of the bilateral dialogues, and we have a few, but probably it is definitely the largest that Chatham House undertakes, and one that we're very proud to be partnering here with our colleagues at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. And Sławomir, I want to say it's been a great pleasure to partner with you on setting this up, getting it together, and obviously very much with the support of the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office and with the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I will thank our ambassador, Anna Clunes. Thank you very much for all your support in the events both here, obviously, but also in Poland as well. And as I am stepping down, and by the way, the seats over here towards the front, do come if you're coming in over here. I want to be able to say a big thanks to the two co-chairs, because I had the pleasure and privilege of being at the creation of the Polish-British Belvedere Forum, and the steering committees that we have with Sir Malcolm Rifkind, our British co-chair. Thank you very much, who will be speaking shortly. And Professor Krasnode, thank you very much, Professor, for being part of this, giving that leadership that you provide on the Polish side and Sir Malcolm provides on the British side to make sure we really do make this what it's meant to be and is, which is a civil society dialogue. In other words, we have aspects of our bilateral politics wound in, we have aspects of our economic relationship wound in, but we also very much want to bring together members of our two societies, which are so deeply intertwined historically, culturally, but in particular in terms of people-to-people interrelationships. And as the director of a policy institute, a think tank, I'm very conscious that we, as Chatham House, are part of civil society. And part of what the two governments wanted to do was in a way to hand over that responsibility to the two civil society institutions to lead this dialogue, which is what we're doing. You've got the program in front of you. I don't want to take up more than my time, so I'm not going to talk through it. I'll let maybe make others make reference to it. I do want to say a big thank you to Minister Marcin, who's with us today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be hearing from you shortly. We will have a video presentation from Lord Ahmad, who I believe is still the Minister of State for South and Central Asia and North Africa. And maybe it's appropriate, it's a video message at this point. But as I said, we've got the two ambassadors here speaking, if I may say, on behalf of the continuity of this relationship, and ambassadors often have to play that nature of the continuity. So I don't want to just thank Anna Clunes, who's with us here, but also Ambassador Wilczek. Thank you very much. Great to have you with us today, also to help kicking it off. So I'm going to sit back down. I'm going to hand over to my partner in crime, Sławomir, who will then hand over to the co-chairs. Thank you very much.
Ministers, Sir Malcolm, professors, Sir Robin, I would like to congratulate you on a distinction you recently received from the Queen. I think it is very well deserved. I remember that I was one of the first your guests as a director of the friendly expert institution 15 years ago. You received me in your office, and we started our cooperation over there then. So I was more than happy that the Belvedere Forum, Polish-British Belvedere Forum, a few years ago was handed to our two respective institutions, and that we managed to went through all these difficult times of COVID. We managed to organize 3 editions during this time, and all in person, lucky we. All the time, that's another impression concerning recent upheaval, political upheavals in this country, that every time Belvedere Forum comes to London, there is a trouble for the government. So I think there is no direct correlation into that. So I think that now we understand the famous Chinese curse about the interesting times. I think these times are too interesting, and it would be much better off if our world would a little bit slow down. But it's moving. Poland and the United Kingdom are leading support and assistance for Ukraine fighting with Russian aggression. I think which this particular issue would be a very good starting point for our conversations today, both on governmental level and civil society level. Both countries, both societies engage in showing support to Ukraine and to Ukrainians very much. The question is how and what policy of next cabinet of this country may look like in this matter, whether we can count on continuation, whether we can still be leaders of the fighting for the principles. Because in the end of the day, both countries are on the same page on the principles. So I would like to wish all of us, both present in person here and also our virtual audience, to have very inspiring, interesting discussion during this edition of the Polish-British Belvedere Forum. And I'd also like all of you to think about the future of this format, of this platform, how it should develop. I think it's in the times of transition, many transitions are around us, we should think about how we should push this agenda forward and how we should still stick together, providing, I think, a good service to both our societies and political elites. So thank you very much for hosting us, and I wish all the best to all the participants of this conference. Now I would like to welcome to the floor Professor Krasnode.
So thank you very much. Congratulations, Robert, for your honor you received, and it is, as always, great pleasure to be here, and thank you once again for invitation, especially in this difficult time. And we have difficult time because of internal politics, but we shouldn't forget what probably is the most important event in the recent European history. This is the war unleashed by Russia, and it will change a lot. We do not know actually what the consequences would be, long-term consequences, but we know one thing, that Britain strongly supports Ukraine. And I think in this crisis we learned once more that we in Poland and Eastern Europe, or Central Europe, are closer to the UK in terms of fundamental values, genuine fundamental values, and understanding of geopolitical situation than to our some of our main partners in the EU. And it is important, and it is how also probably the war will change the EU. We had I came here from Strasbourg, where we had a plenary session of the European Parliament. We had a very interesting meeting also with the Prime Minister of Czech Republic. There's now Czech presidency. There was, of course, his presentation, the program of presidency in European Parliament, but we met also in the fraction, in our political group, ECR. Was in the past also with participation of Britain. And in this meeting, we received many information how now the situation changed, the mood, the hierarchy between the member states. We all know that some of the main member states of the European Union make many mistakes, the dependency on Russia and so on. And I think in this context, it would be very, very important that we continue our meeting in this format, in this framework. We think probably we have to think about some organizational question and some other, how can we better manage this in the future, but I think this is a very important forum. And thank you, Sir Malcolm Rifkind, that also for your contribution and that your leadership on the British side of this forum. Thank you. Thank you very much once again.
Minister, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, can I begin by echoing what Professor Debski said to our colleague Sir Robin Niblett on his decoration by the Queen as the knighthood he received. I would simply mention that when I received my own knighthood some years ago, a friend rather ambiguously remarked, just remember one thing, once a knight is not enough. You can interpret that as you wish. Ladies and gentlemen, in these few comments, what I would like to do, first of all, obviously, is to congratulate and thank both Chatham House and PISM for the tremendous work they have done in organising the conference. There are a total of 200 people approximately, 100 here, 100 online, who are participating in the conference, and that requires no other than a very ambitious level of organisational achievement. So we are very, very grateful to that. The conference, as you will have seen from the programme, covers a range of issues. But obviously there can be no surprise that the dominant issue at this moment in time is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And it's particularly appropriate that a British-Polish forum should be choosing this to actually dwell on in a significant and substantial way over the next 24 hours. Because if we look around the world, Ukraine has many friends and many allies from many countries. But there are no two countries that are as close and have been as helpful and supportive to Ukraine as Poland and the United Kingdom. Now, today, as many of you will know, we are on the brink of having the need for a new British Prime Minister. Boris Johnson announced that he is going to resign. And once a new leader has been chosen, he will step down as Prime Minister. Many criticisms have been made of Boris Johnson, but I would simply say that his policy and strategy leading the British government on Ukraine could not have been improved upon. And I'm not one of his normal friends, I'm one of his normal critics. But I think on this particular subject, he has provided tremendous leadership. What I want to say, and I'm not in government, I'm a private citizen, so I can offer a view and a judgment, but I am 100% certain that whoever succeeds him as Prime Minister will continue exactly the same policy. They may not do so with exactly the same flair, but they will do so with exactly the same substance, because there is no division of opinion that I'm aware of in the Cabinet or in the government as a whole, or for that matter, as it regards at least 90% of the Conservative Party. So I think our Polish friends, and particularly our Ukrainian friends, can be assured that that will be the case. Ukraine and Poland and the United Kingdom, it's not entirely a coincidence that it's Britain and Ukraine that have been, Britain and Poland, I should say, that have been so supportive, even more than many other countries. We had our own experience way back in 1940 during the Second World War, where our very existence as an independent state was at stake during those extraordinary months and several years until the outcome of the Second World War could be realized. And of course, Poland's history has been that on several occasions, the dismemberment of Poland, both in the 20th century and in earlier centuries, is obviously a crucial part of your own national Polish history. May I just say one other thing about the whole Ukraine issue? And it is simply this, that it helps to have been there. I first went to Ukraine in 1992 when I became Minister of Defense. And I deliberately chose Ukraine as one of the first countries to visit because I'd always taken the view that once the Soviet Union collapsed, as long as Ukraine was a truly independent country, then the Russian Federation could never pose as much of a threat as the old Soviet Union, because Ukraine was crucial to the whole identity in the past of Russia as a massive empire. Not just because of Ukraine, a lot of other constituent states that are now independent republics, particularly the Baltic republics. But Ukraine was the linchpin, and that remains true. And I have a vivid recollection of that first visit to Ukraine, when, as Minister of Defense, I met my Polish counterpart. And of course, this was 1992. They'd only been independent for a year. And I was told by the minister, my colleague, that Ukraine was very keen to become as much like Western countries as possible. And he asked, do you have any advice as to how we might do that? Now, when we had that meeting, there were the Brits on one side and the Ukrainians on the other, 6 of us from each nationality. On the British side, I, the ambassador, the other British personnel were all civilians. The only person in uniform was a colonel at the very end taking notes. On their side were 6 generals, including the minister, in full military uniform. And the minister, when he said, do you have any advice for us? I couldn't resist it. What a question to be asked. So I said, well, as you're asking, you say you want to be more like the West. One of the fundamental features of Western countries is that the armed forces come under unambiguous civilian control, not to fight the war, but the overall control of the armed forces and the Minister of Defense and so forth. And I said, just look at the 2 sides of the table to see the difference that currently exists. He did not respond on that point at that first meeting, but the following morning, when we had our second session, all 6 of them came in wearing suits. And the minister said, well, are you satisfied? I said, it's an important step in the right direction. But enough from me. I think the program is an excellent program. I pay tribute to both the PISM and the Polish side, as well as the colleagues in Chatham House. And I hope we have an extremely good conference. And I think the next speaker will be Anna Clunes, the British ambassador in Warsaw. So I wish the conference well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dziękuję. I wrote some words yesterday that I had planned to say today, and then I had a slightly stressful night wondering whether they were still relevant. But actually, even at this moment of significant political change in the United Kingdom, the message that I wanted to start today's event with around the strength of the UK-Poland's relationship and the continuation of that is exactly the same as I would have said yesterday. And Malcolm, thank you, Sir Malcolm, for basically saying the same thing as I will now put into my words on behalf of the British government. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's a gift to an ambassador to have a civil society dialogue talking about the country that I work normally with Piotr Wilczek to think about how we make our relationship even closer. But to have a room and filled with people who are thinking about the same thing is a real privilege. But the significant thing that has happened since we met in Warsaw a year ago, just under a year ago, is the most significant threat to security in Europe, probably since the Second World War. I know that the Foreign Secretary talks about foreign policy being back, and I think it is absolutely significant. I agree with Malcolm that Poland and the United Kingdom have stood up together as two leaders in support of Ukraine and working together and standing up against the brutality, the unprovoked aggression of Russia in Ukraine. And that backdrop and the fact that as two countries we have come together, I think has strengthened the relationship in many areas. We have shared challenges and shared responses across almost all aspects of the crisis. We're working together on the humanitarian response. And I just wanted to start by paying tribute. It's been a privilege to live in Poland over the last few months and see the response, to be at the border, to see the generosity of the Polish society in welcoming Ukrainian and providing support. And as I say, on behalf of the government, I really need to pay tribute to what I have seen. I am glad that we are able to support you in that effort. We have seen a strengthening of our military cooperation, both in terms of supporting each other and getting supply lines into Ukraine, but actually also working together to ensure Poland's security on the front line, and working together in NATO with a significant summit last week in Madrid to deliver the kind of transformation of NATO to be ready to the threat as we now perceive it. We've worked very closely together on sanctions against Russia. And will continue to do so to make sure that those who are responsible for the aggression are paying the price for the aggression. And we've worked together on some of the challenges that I think are now emerging, whether that's the food security issue, economic security, and energy security. And all of that sits on top of a relationship that's already strong around the areas of trade and culture, and this event is a good example of it. As an embassy, we've been privileged to be part of that. I think it's given real focus to our work over the last months. It's certainly meant that we've had a huge number of ministerial visitors to Poland, and the strength of the diplomacy between our two countries has stepped up a level. I think since the 24th of February, we have hosted 18 ministerial level visits in Poland, and that gives a sense of just quite how intense the relationship is and the conversations between our two governments at this stage. One of those ministers who came to Poland was Lord Ahmad, and I am delighted to pause here and to pass over to him to say a few words of introduction. Thank you very much.
Szanowni Państwo, ladies and gentlemen, it's my immense pleasure to welcome you all to the 6th Belvedere Forum. It is great that this event has returned to London, but I do have a regret that because of parliamentary business, I'm unable to join you in person. A lot, of course, has changed since the last forum in Warsaw. Tragically, war has returned to Europe on a scale not seen in generations, causing untold suffering and misery. And as we come together in both safety and comfort, we of course remember our Ukrainian colleagues and friends, worried for their future, concerned for their loved ones, fighting for their freedom, and we stand with them. In March, I had an opportunity to visit Poland and saw the steady stream of refugees seeking safety, each one's life upturned by this tragic war. I also saw the incredible support and kindness being shown to all those fleeing the war by Polish organizations, the government, and most importantly, the warmth of the Polish people. On our part, the United Kingdom government has pledged a total of £3.8 billion of both military and economic support to Ukraine this year. In April, we committed an additional £20 million in humanitarian funding in and with Poland, including £10 million, which will go towards joint UK-Polish humanitarian projects. We have also now issued over 140,000 visas for Ukrainians seeking refuge here in the United Kingdom. Of course, the United Kingdom and Poland must continue our vital work with our allies to ensure there is total support for Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. It will not be easy, The cost of ensuring Mr. Putin's invasion fails is mounting. Choosing to endure hardship in pursuit of freedom of others is difficult. However, we need only to look at our shared history for the inspiration which is needed. Right here in our capital city in London, which was brutally bombed during the Blitz. But again, it was the Polish pilots who joined us, who flew for the RAF, and we still remember them. After Poland had fallen to Nazi and then Soviet aggression, young Poles continued to fight, risking their lives in defense of the United Kingdom, our freedom and our shared way of life. Some, of course, made the ultimate sacrifice, and this debt can never be repaid. Today, as back then, let me assure you, the United Kingdom remains committed to European security and the defense of our allies. Through an ever more capable NATO, we are working to ensure that aggressors are deterred and our freedoms and liberties are maintained. The United Kingdom-Poland defense and military partnership is hugely important, but there is much more that links us together. The joy of Belvedere is that it fosters discussion on a wide range of issues, the two ties that bind our two countries, and of course, importantly, how we work together for our future. It is heartening to see there will be a discussion on the incredible British diaspora here from Poland in the UK, a community that makes an incredible contribution to our collective life in the United Kingdom, whether that's within our schools, our businesses, our communities. We're proud of the British-Polish diaspora of the UK. The Belvedere Forum is a showcase of this very expertise, knowledge and experience, which is a testament to the hard work of the organizers. So may I take this opportunity to thank the organizers, to thank you, Chatham House, the Polish Institute of International Affairs, and of course, our friends and partners in the Polish government for helping to make it happen. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the esteemed panelists who will be leading the important discussions and helping to steer discussions to persevere understanding and friendship between our two countries, the United Kingdom and Poland. And finally, I hope this forum proves to be productive, enjoyable, and enlightening. Thank you.
Dear friends, dear directors, co-chairs, Mr. Minister, Excellencies, ambassadors, Polish British friends, I'm absolutely delighted to take part in this 6th edition of the Polish British Belvedere Forum, all the more as it is our only bilateral event that has continued without interruption despite the pandemic. If ever there was stronger evidence of resilience in Polish-British relations, this is it. Maybe another is that the fact that today's meeting is taking place in quite turbulent times for British domestic policy, but nevertheless, we've managed to meet and discuss the future of our relations. Warsaw and London may be 1,000 miles apart, but Polish-British relations are in excellent shape. Please do not consider this assessment as diplomatic parlance. I say this with utter conviction and with plenty of evidence to boot. Poland and the UK are connected by a deep strategic partnership. It is rooted not only in common values and interests, but many varied links, some of which I'd like to tease out. Also, the spectrum of issues on which Poland and the UK cooperate is very broad, from our shared concerns regarding Europe's eastern neighborhood to those of the global community addressed at the United Nations, from our interest in strengthening NATO to our desire to engage in the in the Pacific region, from our pursuit of energy transformation to bolstering our economic relations. Dear friends, focusing solely only on the politics of our relations would do injustice to the breadth and depth of our bond. The Polish-British Belvedere Forum, in which I'm proud to take part, attests to the vitality in our people-to-people contacts. It is a shining example of how valuable civil society dimension remains to our relationship. So Robin just mentioned about this think tank cooperation. For relations between states to work effectively, they must be people-centered. Cooperative links between think tanks and civil societies of our two countries are not an output of our relations, they are the key driver. Such voices, indeed your voices, serve to strengthen the bond between the Polish and British societies. The relations between Poland and Britain are anchored in a strong contribution of the 1 million strong Polish diaspora in the United Kingdom. The Poles have become an essential thread in the fabric of their local communities. I'm glad that tomorrow at this forum we'll be discussing the Poles' place in and contribution to the British society. Poland and Britain continue to develop robust cultural links, and as you know, art brings people together. With this in mind, last year, the British National Gallery hosted an exhibition of Jan Matejko's painting Copernicus, Astronomer, Conversations with God. I hope this is only the beginning of a deeper exposure of the British audiences to the wealth and diversity of Polish art. As in any relationship, the Polish-British one is geared in large measure towards creating prosperity for our citizens. No matter how choppy the waters have been after Brexit, I'm pleased to say it is smooth sailing for our economic relations. Our bilateral trade and mutual investments have been on the rise for over a decade. We cannot take these tailwinds for granted, but be a bit even more ambitious. Ladies and gentlemen, security and defense policy, already mentioned several times in previous speeches, is a prominent pillar of the Polish-British relations. Poland and the UK remain stalwart NATO allies. For years, Poland and the United Kingdom have been vocal about the threat posed by Putin's Russia's aggressive policy. Our countries have been clearly seen the escalation curve in Russia's aggression since the invasion of Georgia in 2008. These lessons learned, including Russia's brazen attacks on individuals inside the UK, have shaped our policy recommendations. And they were very simply the need to invest more in deterrence and defense, maintain NATO's open door, and keep our transatlantic links as strong as ever. That is why at the recent Madrid summit, we supported substantially strengthening NATO's eastern flank. Since 2017, Poland and the UK are bound by the Treaty on Cooperation in Security and Defence. It has brought concrete results. For instance, in military procurement, British enterprises participate in important projects to modernise the Polish armed forces. The number of British soldiers on our territory has increased to around 700 troops. Reinforcements of Poland's security is a net gain to the security of Britain and the Euro-Atlantic community. We appreciate the British commitment to NATO's eastern flank and continue to encourage our close ally to even more robust engagement. Dear friends, today marks the 134th day of war taking place in Europe. Russia's barbaric invasion of sovereign and democratic Ukraine is currently the single most factor casting a shadow over every deliberation, every action and every reflection on our past, present and future. Poland and the UK understand the geopolitical stakes of this war. This is why our leaders have kept up a straightforward message. Ukraine must win, and that means Putin must fail. An attempt to redraw Europe's frontiers by force must fail. The ideology of Ruski Mir, or just to put it simply, Russism, aimed at recreating a Soviet-style empire, must fail. Russia's attack on Ukraine has galvanized a strong response, both by Poland and Britain. From day one, our cooperation in support of Kiev has been nothing but stellar. Action speaks louder than words. Poland and the UK are among the top 3 biggest donors of military equipment to the Ukrainian military forces. Poland is the most important logistical hub for deliveries of supplies of military equipment and humanitarian aid from Britain and many other countries. Thousands of weapons, runs of ammunition and tons of humanitarian aid cross the Polish-Ukrainian border day and night. Warsaw and London cooperate on a daily basis, providing Ukraine with provisions needed to help win the war and save lives. In Madrid, we as the alliance agreed to assist adequately those allies providing support to Ukraine, recognizing their specific situation. Let us be clear. Poland is one of the most exposed countries. We are at risk. Therefore, we count on even greater support from our allies. Polish-British cooperation in assisting Ukraine has already given rise to new relationship. I have in mind the unique format of Polish-British cooperation on Ukraine announced by the foreign ministers of the 3 countries just before the outbreak of war. In the wake of the joint declaration signed in April, we have also established a joint commission to assist Ukraine as much in this hour of need as in the long haul. This collaboration should take us into the post-conflict area. We need all hands on the deck to help rebuild a peaceful, free, and a resilient Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, the multifaceted relationship between Poland and the UK, already strong, shows much greater potential in every one of our fields of cooperation, be it in the economy, science and research or security. There is a space for new ideas and initiatives that will take our relations to new heights. While today our focus remains obviously on the need to help Ukraine win the war and thus help secure peace in Europe, we need to look at the next step and in strategic terms. As NATO had embarked on an ambitious program of adaptation for future challenges, NATO 2030, so should our relationship. Being security firsters, as no doubt are both Poland and Britain, we are aware that ensuring security is more than just a question of securing borders. It requires energy security, ensuring security of our supplies, including our lifeline, food and critical infrastructure, to name a few fundamental components of our modern life. So we need to focus on and bolster each and every individual aspect of our relationship so that our relationship serves us well into the 21st century. And this is exactly what we are doing, and this is exactly what you are probably talking about today. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you successful discussion. Thank you.
Ministers, Ambassador, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's always a challenge to be the last speaker. I'll be brief. I'll speak in English, although, as you know, Polish is the second spoken language in this country, but not everyone speaks Polish in this room, unfortunately, so I have to, yet. So I'll deliver my short remarks in English. I'm honored to take the floor after the message sent by Lord Ahmad of Wimbledon, Minister Przydacz, and my dear friend and colleague Anna Clunes. It is my pleasure to speak during the Belvedere Forum for the first time as Ambassador of Poland to the United Kingdom. Although I took up my post as Ambassador on Valentine's Day, 14th of February this year, the beginning of my tenure was no honeymoon. Just 10 days later, an unprovoked, unjustified and inhumane attack took place on Ukraine, our neighbor country. Ritual courtesy calls any new ambassador has in his new country of residence turned out to be talks of a completely different gravity. There was, however, a crucial aspect that made my work here easier. Over the past 5 months, I have learned that Poland and the United Kingdom are truly like-minded countries. In numerous areas of cooperation, our British partners need no convincing to take part in joint initiatives, as it often turns out London and Warsaw are on the same page. As both ministers mentioned extensively, and I do not wish to bore you by repeating their words, the roots of our relationship are strong and build up the basis for cooperation in many areas. This has its direct reflection in political contacts. We've had many high-level visits to Warsaw, to London. Just this week, our foreign minister, Zbigniew Rau, was a guest of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in Birmingham. Our special envoy for freedom of religion, Paweł Radomski, delivered the Polish pledge at the Freedom of Religious and Belief Conference and met Lord Ahmad and Fiona Bruce. Minister Przydacz mentioned that describing the state of Poland's bilateral relations with the UK as excellent is no exaggeration. With equal conviction, I can describe the regular contacts I have just mentioned as true cooperation and partnership, not just as ceremonial meetings for the sake of a few handshakes and photos and tweets. These political contacts are a reflection of our special relationship and will continue despite any political turmoil which may take place in either country. Economic and people-to-people contacts add to the picture of a stable, serious and deep relationship between our two nations. I cannot leave out the Polish diaspora here. I have already managed to visit Scotland, Jersey, the Isle of Wight. I'll be visiting Wales very soon. In all these places I visited, I was greeted by a strong and tightly knit Polish community. I like to think of building up our bilateral relations in the same way as one would think of building a house. Every new joint initiative, every new common goal we achieve together are new floors which we will add on top of this dwelling we are constructing together. I have no doubt that we can continue to add an infinite number of floors, and yet there will still be absolutely no risk of the Polish-British house toppling. It is, after all, based on strong and resilient foundations, which we have seen withstand turmoil on a number of occasions. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to have the final word in this opening session of the 6th Belvedere Forum. The contacts between members of the civil societies in both countries are fundamental to the strength of our bilateral relations. In this spirit, I wish you a fruitful and interesting forum. Thank you very much.